right, everything's started. You can open up the waiting room and let them all in. Good luck, everyone.
Good morning. Welcome to this week's virtual Sunday service. My name is Charlene Reynolds Santo. I'm a member of the worship arts team, and my pronouns are she and her. Today we gather with the hope of being a welcoming environment to nurture and explore individual spirituality, to build a committed and loving community, and to help heal our broken world. If this is your first time with us, I'd like to extend a special welcome to you. Please look at our webpage for more information about UUCR. Here you can find details about our church community, sign up for the weekly newsletter, and find the contact information for Melissa Martin. Melissa is our new member coordinator, and she can answer all of your questions. If you are watching this service during its initial broadcast at 10 a.m. on June 5th, please join us after the service for fellowship. This is a great way to keep connected and to check in on one another within our church community using small group conversations via Zoom. If you're watching the service on Zoom, just stay on after the service or find the link to the Zoom meeting in your weekly UUCR newsletter. Thank you for being here this morning. And please know that we believe you belong here. Maybe just for the next hour, although we hope for longer. You belong here, and we are happy to have you here. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm Katie McQuaige-Lucas, your ministerial intern, and my pronouns are she and hers. As part of our ongoing work to build beloved community, today we're offering a service that has occurred widely throughout the Unitarian Universalist Association. The promise and the practice calls those of us who are white, who often have our experiences centered, to do the sacred work of bringing other voices in from the margins. The reflection today, the readings, the music, even the prayer, all of these are the words of Black Unitarian Universalist leaders, given to us as a prophetic offering in a moment when our faith was failing to live up to its promises. We are revisiting it today because we know that work is ongoing. We revisit it because the lived experience of Black UUs is a sacred text. And so I invite us into worship with the words of the Reverend Viola Abbott, who serves the coastal Virginia UUs in Virginia Beach. We are Unitarian Universalists. When we lift up our 7 principles, some of us think of them as a form of theology, but they are more important to our collective than that. They do not tell us what we should believe. They tell us how we should be. They tell us how we should act in the larger world and with each other. We are brought here today by the fact that Unitarian Universalism has sometimes fallen short of the image that was presented to the world and to many of those who embraced this religion. But we are also brought here today by the truth that Unitarian Universalism has shifted course to move toward a place of wholeness, a place that perhaps never existed for us as a denomination. It has been a long and sometimes unforgiving road to today, but we are here today because we are mindful of that past and because we have hope for the future. We want the practice of this faith to be a fulfilling manifestation of its promise. Open your hearts, seek new ways of understanding, and come, let us worship together. Please join us in lighting our chalice.
You'll find our chalice lighting words in the chat and or in your order of service. Thank you for joining me. We light this chalice in the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment. We gather this day. May the flame we now kindle be to us a symbol of the holiness we seek. And our children's affirmation that reminds us what it means to be Unitarian Universalists. We are Unitarian Universalists, a church of open mind, loving heart, and helping hands.
Our opening hymn this morning is There's a River Flowing in My Soul. It's written by Rose Saunders, who was a civil rights attorney and activist, active in the Selma, Alabama area during the civil rights period. She was also named the very first Black woman judge in Alabama. And she writes this wonderful piece that's a wonderful affirmation of the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Sing along with There's a River Flowing in My Soul. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my heart, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river There's a river flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing in my mind, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my mind.
Our first reading is from Reverend Kimberly Quinn Johnson, minister of the Unitarian Universalist congregation of the South Fork. Among her many specialties in ministry are anti-racism work and youth ministry. Her reading begins with words from Dr. Barbara Holmes. Joy unspeakable is not silent. It moans and hums to the rhythm of a dancing universe. For our free African ancestors, joy unspeakable is drum talk. For enslaved Africans during the Middle Passage, joy unspeakable is the surprise of living one more day. For Africans in bondage in the Americas, joy unspeakable is the moment of mystical encounter when God tiptoes into the hush arbor. Joy unspeakable is humming, how I got over after swimming safely to the other shore of a swollen Ohio River when you know that you can't swim. Reverend Johnson begins. When theologian Barbara A. Holmes talks about joy unspeakable, she's talking specifically about how the contemplative practices of the Black church have sustained Black people in America through suffering and survival. More than referring to a particular church or denomination, this experience is collective and trans-historical. It's also a different expression of Black religion than I'm expected to exhibit as a Black woman. On more than one occasion, I've had a particular mode of Black worship projected onto me, the more charismatic modes of Black worship that we're so familiar with: the shout, the stomp, the song. That particular style of Black worship somehow strikes me as a caricature of joy, a shallow stereotype. I see this in the expectation that more Black worship will bring more lively singing, more rhythmic clapping, and more energetic worship. I see this in the anxiety that more Black worship will bring more lively singing, more rhythmic clapping, more energetic worship. The shout, the stomp, the song. But this caricature, this stereotype, is a narrow sliver of the complexity and the richness of Black spirituality and Black worship. The modes of Black spirituality that are most powerful, nourishing, and nurturing for me aren't the stomp, shout, or song. Instead, I think of the rock, the sway, the bend, the moan, the hum. And I think of these things done in community. I marvel that in the midst of sadness and sorrow, in the midst of feeling the effects of generations of trauma wrought by racism and white supremacy, we can still find joy with each other. We are finding joy in each other. I call it Black joy because I am Black, and it is the joy that I have been familiar with my whole life. It is the joy that I have learned from Black people. It is the joy created through our collective healing, our laying down of burdens to be picked up and shared by our people, our community. This is not joy in spite of suffering, a mask put on to hide pain, an armor put on to push through pain. This is an embrace, holding and soothing us in our suffering. This Black joy is joy created through our being together. This Black joy reminds me that I am not alone, that trouble don't last always, that I am held and carried forward by a power beyond what I can comprehend. I call it Black joy, but I want to offer it to the extent that it is mine to offer to this faith. One of my gifts to Unitarian Universalism is the suggestion that joy is ours. We are the people who commit to justice, equity, and compassion. We are the people who aspire to world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. We are the people who affirm our interdependence with each other and the universe itself. I want to challenge Unitarian Universalism and Unitarian Universalists to claim joy. Unitarian Universalist joy will require a different way of imagining ourselves and a different way of being with each other. Claiming the possibility of Unitarian Universalist joy requires making space for the surprise that Holmes describes. Claiming the possibility of Unitarian Universalist joy requires slowing down to hear the talk of the drum, pausing to move to the rhythms of the drum. Unitarian Universalist joy requires opening to the possibility of the mystical encounter. Unitarian Universalist joy requires embodying this faith differently than many of us are accustomed to.
Our prayer this morning is also from the Reverend Viola Abbott. So let us open our hearts, still our minds, and enter a time of prayer. Let us call forth and hold in our hearts the stories of all who have come before us, the memories of those who are with us today, and the hope for tomorrow, and for all of those who will come after us. Let us be thankful for this opportunity for healing, forgiveness, and reconciliation, while knowing we can never, should never forget what has brought us here today. Let us be glad that voice has not only been given to those whose sorrow and pain were their companions in this faith, but that the stories told by those voices have been received with a goal of redemption and understanding. Let us call upon that light which shines in each of us to give us the strength to walk together into the future and do the work that is necessary and which does not end here today. Let us have the wisdom to lovingly have the conversations we need to have with each other, that we must have with each other, in order to grow this faith in radical love and inclusion. Amen.
For the last year and a half, UUCR has been donating half of the funds received in the collection plate to a nonprofit organization that shares our UU values. We don't do this because we have more than we need, but because there is so much need. Our Share the Plate recipient for the month of June is Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism, BLUU. Now, BLUU was founded in 2015 to provide support, information, and resources for Black Unitarian Universalists. It's committed to justice making and liberation, and to the expanding the roles and visibility of Black UUs within our faith. BLUU harnesses the power of love to combat oppression and foster healing as a spiritual and political imperative. It affirms love's power to be life-changing, inclusive, rational, uncomfortable, unconditional, and without end. Please give as generously as you are willing and able to our virtual Sunday Share the Plate offering to support the work of BLUU and the mission of UUCR. Thank you.
The human spirit is a powerful thing, and we know we can find, even in the depth of despair, belief that goodness will prevail and that faith is stronger than fear. An enduring testament to this kind of faith can be found in the lyrics of our choral anthem, I Believe. They're drawn from words that were found inscribed on a cellar wall from what once was a Jewish ghetto. The writer gifts us with these powerful words of faith. I believe in the sun, even when it's not shining. I believe in love, even when I don't feel it. And I believe in God, even when God is silent. May these words give us strength and hope in these challenging times.
I believe in the sun. I believe in the sun, even when it's not shining. I believe in the sun. I believe in the sun, even when it's not shining. I believe in life. I believe in life, even when I don't feel it. I believe in I believe in God. I believe in God, even when God is silent.
Our next reading is Missing Voices by Connie Simon. When I started attending a UU church, I was excited by the promise of worship that would draw from the arts, science, nature, literature, and a multitude of voices. Indeed, some of the voices that Unitarian Universalists hear in worship each week belong to Thoreau, Emerson, Ballou, and others. Their words are beautiful, but they come from a culture and experience that's foreign to me. When do I get to hear voices from my culture? I quickly learned that other than a few quotes from Martin Luther King and Howard Thurman's The Work of Christmas, it wasn't going to happen. I sit attentively and listen with my head to their voices, while my heart longs to hear our voices. I am a Black woman. When I look around Sunday morning, I don't see many people who look like me. In most congregations I visit, I don't see anyone who looks like me. So I guess I shouldn't be surprised that I don't hear voices of people who share my experience. But still, it hurts. I want to hear voices that tell the struggle of living under the weight of oppression in this culture of white supremacy. I want to hear stories of trying to stay afloat in the water we swim in. I want to hear voices of living while Black in America. I don't hear those voices in UU churches, so I have to supplement my worship by reading Black theologians like Anthony Pinn and Monica Coleman. I read Maya Angelou and James Baldwin, and my favorite, poet Lawrence Dunbar. Although not a Unitarian or a Universalist, Dunbar chronicled the African-American experience in the years following the Civil War and the emancipation of enslaved Africans. A time of opportunities for Blacks as we migrated north in droves seeking employment and education, but also a time of continuing segregation, racism, and oppression. Dunbar acknowledged this tension in his writing. We hear him long for joy and prosperity, while at the same time knowing that the system would conspire to keep hope, to keep true happiness just beyond his grasp. A pint of joy to a peck of trouble, and never a laugh, but moans come double. And that is life, is his quote. Still, he was a champion for social justice, believing that God has sympathy for the plight of the oppressed, and that his grace will be bestowed not on those who soar, but they who plod their rugged way unhelped to God. For Dunbar, the struggle was real. 100 years later, hearing Dunbar express his frustration and give voice to the contradictions of our existence as African Americans encourages me and nourishes my soul. His voice speaks to my heart. He knows my pain and understands my sadness, my fear, and my rage. He understands the tears I cry as I pray for strength to get through another day in this world. He gives voice to my deep faith that real change is coming someday. He didn't see it in his lifetime, and I may not see it in mine, but I have to keep believing it is possible. That's the message many African Americans long to hear in church. I know that's what I need to hear every now and then. Will it ever happen? Or will we always have to go outside to hear our voices? If that's the case, maybe there's no place for us in Unitarian Universalism. The thought of leaving is painful, but so is being in a faith that ignores our voices.
When I was in middle school, I was taught that every person, to some extent, holds a set of prejudices that impact our perceptions of others. We were asked to think about what our prejudices might be and how they might inform our relationships and our movement through the world. I knew immediately that my bias was against wealthy people. I say was, but really it's a prejudice I cling to even today. As a private school teacher who became an arts administrator, who became an opera singer, who became a music director for choir and theater, and who found his way into a Unitarian Universalist context, I recognize that wealthy people have funded my entire adult existence. My career has taught me to curb my lack of enthusiasm for the rich in support of the greater goal of professional success. My prejudice against the wealthy stems in part from the fact that I've never been wealthy myself. Every person in my family has had to work extremely hard to earn and save every dollar they have ever had. And I'm certain that if I ever became wealthy, my feelings would likely shift. I'm a church musician for a living, however, so wealth is not a prospect I can expect to ever experience. Beyond those reasons for this prejudice of mine, I'm also troubled by some of the ethics around wealth. There's a story in the Christian Bible that I've been thinking about a lot lately. It's recorded in the 19th chapter of the Gospel according to Matthew. It goes kind of like this. A young rich man approaches Jesus and asks what he can do to help bring about the beloved community. Jesus replies by pretty much telling the man to go do all the right things, treat people well, and spread love. The young man says that he's already doing all those things to Jesus, which he responds, "Then go, sell all your stuff and give your money to those who have less of it." As the story goes, the rich man went away in deep despair. It does not tell us what decisions he made, but I'm willing to bet he held on to his wealth. This is the story that leads up to the famous passage that warns, "It is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for the wealthy to participate in activating the beloved community." In the innermost part of my being, I believe that it is unethical to be wealthy in a society where there is also poverty. My sensible self, however, recognizes that there is a lack of justice in that conclusion too. There's nothing wrong with being rich. And an argument can probably be made that there's nothing inherently wrong with not sharing one's wealth, unless, of course, you're a Christian, in which case your faith demands it of you. No, there's nothing wrong with having a lot of money. The trouble comes in how we manage the power it gives us. The trouble comes in how we use that wealth and power through both action and inaction to stifle the lives of those who have none. By now, I'm sure you think I've forgotten that I'm offering these reflections in a service dedicated to examining institutional white supremacy. Here, try this. For decades, we have been preaching the message of how inequality and injustice are pervasive in our Unitarian Universalist systems and institutions. Every time there's a resurgence of energy from the well-meaning white liberals who comprise the bulk of this faith, they say, "We get it now, we finally see it. What can we do to help?" More often than not, those of us doing the preaching, those of us willing to get caught up in the middle of this hopeless mess, steadfastly clinging to hope, respond with instructions, which books and articles to read, which classes, workshops, and rallies to attend, encouragement to recognize and own one's own privilege. We offer reminders that the beginning of dismantling the unfair systems of white supremacy is in learning to recognize the points of privilege in one's own life. All of that is true, but it's also weak. So, well-meaning white liberals come back and say, "Great, we've been doing that and we've learned a whole lot. but we still feel like unintentional racists. What can we do? This is where we, those who bear the burden of teaching, too often respond with something like, "Well done, good and faithful social justice advocate. Go and tell everyone you know of what you've learned." So our well-intentioned siblings in faith do that and feel good about it. Yet racism persists, and a decade later, those same people are confused about what they missed the last time. Here's what we should be saying. Denounce all your privilege and give it to those with none. Talk about an action item. I guarantee that would get folks' attention. Sadly, it will likely also mean they will go away deep in despair, doing nothing at all. I believe, however, that we do not talk explicitly enough about the fact that every person's privilege is tied to our corrupted system of capitalism. This is true in our country, and it's also true in our Unitarian Universalist congregations. For a person to denounce their privilege, they would have to be willing to give up all that they have mythically come to believe they have earned. If we're serious about dismantling the idea that white people are better than others, it means white people have to stop accepting better salaries and benefits packages than their colleagues of color. It means preaching about living within your means instead of below them, to stop spending less money than one can afford to, because our money has an impact on others. It means preaching against unethical gentrification. It means white people finally believing they should not have everything they want just because they are able to access it through use of their inherited social capital. Look, as a black man, white people often frustrate me, but there is nothing inherently wrong with being white. And if you ask me, there's nothing inherently wrong with lacking racial diversity. That is, unless you're a universalist and your faith demands it of you. The problem is around the ethics of whiteness, how white people manage the power they have claimed. The trouble comes in how that privilege and power are used to stifle the lives of those who have none. This moment in our tradition calls for both introspection and a charge for bold commitment. We have practiced hope. We have practiced making promises. Now we must promise action.
I was born by the river in a little tent. Oh, and just like that river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long, long time coming, but I know change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die, 'cause I don't know what's out there beyond the sky. It's been a long, long time coming, but I know change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. I go to the movies, I go downtown. Somebody keep telling me don't hang around. It's been a long, long time coming, but I know change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. Then I go to my brother, I say, brother, help me please. But he winds up knocking me, oh, back down on my knees. Oh, there've been times when I thought last for long. But now I think I'm able to carry on. It's been a long, long time coming, but I know, oh, change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will.
Our last reading is Words Matter by Reverend Carol Thomas Sissel, who's the settled minister at the UU Fellowship of Center County in State College, Pennsylvania. Diverse, multicultural, inclusive, welcoming. If I made a list of every single Unitarian Universalist congregation I have served, visited, or worshiped at, they would have a few things in common, including the use of these words, perhaps on the front of the order of service, or scrolling across the homepage of their website. Maybe they've been emblazoned on a rainbow-colored banner hanging in the sanctuary. Wherever they are, more often than not, the words are proudly combined with another expression that has been embraced in everyday UU vernacular. All are welcome here. The congregations, churches, and fellowships on my list all have one or more of these words proudly on display. I know why they are used so freely. Initially, I feel embraced by them. There's a warmth of recognition when my eyes first capture their sight. A sense of being acknowledged and valued moves from heart to head, and then a smile settles on my lips. My heart blooms. I feel like the welcome table has been set for me, and I am eager to pull up a chair. All of this takes place in an immeasurable instant. In the next moment, it is tempered. I remember past experiences and unconsciously recalculate and measure my response. The petals of my heart close a bit, protecting the delicate stamen and stigma that lie within. Fear of disappointment rises within me like the sun. I love those words. I want what they promise, but I have been repeatedly disappointed. It is simply not enough to print them on an order of service or in a newsletter. They must have meaning and intention at their core. A desire for multicultural worship is wonderful, but it will not flower if that seed of yearning is not nurtured by commitment and a plan. Longing for diversity of race, gender, or age is only a beginning. It calls for caring and creative programming. Our congregations are primarily white, female, and over 60. If we are to serve into the future, that must change. I believe that we can transform first ourselves and then the world. I am injured repeatedly when we do not. When we use words just for the sake of using them, I am hurt. Without true resolve, planning, and measurable goals behind the things I see, my trust and hope are broken anew. Why does it hurt? Every time I see those words, I feel the possible revival of Unitarian Universalism germinating in the warm soil of spirit. I have seen the transformation begin to take place in Washington State, Washington, D.C., and California. Congregations in Oklahoma continue to push our faith forward. So yes, I am hopeful but wary. On too many occasions and in too many places, these words and the ideals they carry are given lip service. Words matter. They lift and hold us. They illuminate the future and shower us with possibilities. When misused, they hurt. Verbal cuts and abrasions sting. Language leaves wounds that become scars. Words matter. If you and your congregation are not ready to meet the promises you craft and then share with the world, stop publishing them. Please don't invite me to sit at your table unless you have a warm, satisfying meal to serve. It does not have to be a gourmet feast. A potluck is fine. The souffle may only have risen halfway. The cookies might be burned on the edges. The pasta can be overcooked. That's okay. I'm starving. What it must be is fulfilling, real, made with love, and ready to be eaten. Remember, I believe what you say and write. Words matter.
I'm Melissa Martin, your Member Services and Volunteer Coordinator. My pronouns are she and her. This week in our congregational life, we have a few highlights to lift up. Our pastoral care team continues to offer caring conversations each Monday. And this week, they'll begin offering alternating evening and morning sessions. This Monday, the caring conversation will be held at 7 p.m. and you can find the link in our resource guide. Also offered tomorrow evening, you are invited to join us for the first of 2 sessions in our June Social Justice Lecture Series. The lecture of Reverend Morrison Reed will be discussed tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. And there's a link to the lecture in the newsletter and in the resource guide for you to view in advance of the discussion. Our Liberal Ladies invite you to join them this Wednesday for their final gathering of the church year. They have a wonderful gathering planned and hope that you'll join them. They look forward to resuming this engaging series in the fall. We invite you to take a look at the newsletter and read all about other upcoming offerings, including a summer UU Kids Connection Camp and a 5-week online adult summer anti-racism learning opportunity, both of which have new registration forms in the newsletter. For today, join us after this service for our Zoom social hour, where we invite you to discuss today's service, and new visitors are invited to join me for a dedicated welcome Zoom room. Thank you for being a vital part of our congregational life.
Sing with me now on this great hymn, Hush. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? Sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? Sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? I'm so glad that trouble don't last always. I'm so glad that trouble don't last always. I'm so glad that trouble don't last always. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do?
Together we extinguish our shared chalice. And we share our chalice extinguishing words that you'll find in the chat or your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts. Our benediction is from Reverend Kimberly Quinn Johnson, who leans into the gospel hymn, Hush. Somebody's calling your name. Can you hear it? Calling you to a past not quite forgotten, calling us to a future not fully imagined. Hush, hush. Somebody's calling our name. What shall we do?